I lived by anger my entire life, and when I died, God showed me exactly where that road was ending. My name is Desmond Asante. I am 42 years old, and 3 years ago, I was a man nobody wanted to be around, including the people who loved me most. If you'd seen me back then, you would have seen size. You would have seen a big man. Broad shoulders, scarred knuckles, jaw set like concrete. You would have seen the kind of man people moved out of the way for on the pavement. The kind of man who walked into a room and the temperature changed. But you would not have seen what was underneath all of that. You would not have seen the boy from Wolverhampton who learned before he could read that showing weakness meant getting hurt. You would not have seen the grown man who cried exactly once in 20 years and hated himself for it. You would not have seen the father who watched his teenage son flinch every time he raised his voice. I'm telling you this story because I want you to know something before we go any further. Change is possible. Real change. Not managing yourself better. Not white-knuckling through another week. I am talking about becoming a completely different man from the inside out. I know it is possible because it happened to me on a cold Sunday evening in March, in my own garage, with no heartbeat and no breath and nowhere left to run. But before I take you there, I need to take you back, because you need to understand who Desmond Asante was, before you can understand what God did with him. If you have never subscribed to this channel, now is the time. Every week we share real stories of real people who encountered God and came back changed. Hit that subscribe button right now and stay with me, because this story is just getting started. I grew up in Wolverhampton, Whitmore Reen's estate. Tight streets, tight money, and a father who filled every room he walked into with a silence that felt like a warning. My father, Emmanuel Asante, came from Ghana with nothing and built something out of sheer will. I respected him, I feared him, and I spent my whole life trying to become him without ever asking whether that was something worth becoming. He never hit me. I want to be clear about that. He never raised a hand. But he had this way of looking at you when you disappointed him that felt worse than any belt. It was a look that said, "You are less than what I expected." And as a boy, all I wanted was to be more. More than enough. More than what that look said I was. So I got big. I started lifting weights at 14 in a friend's back garden with 2 old dumbbells and a broken bench. By 16, I was training at a boxing gym on New Hampton Road. Not because I love boxing, but because I loved the way it felt to not be afraid anymore. Every fight I won was a message to that look on my father's face. See me now. See what I am. By the time I was 19, I was working the door at a nightclub in the city center. The job suited me perfectly. Stand here. Look dangerous. Make sure nothing gets out of hand. It was the first time in my life that my size and my anger were not problems to manage. They were assets. People paid me for them. And that rewired something in my brain in a way I did not fully understand until it was almost too late. The underground fighting came a few years later. A man I worked with on the doors told me about it. Private venues. No rules. Cash in hand. I told myself I was doing it for the money. But that was not the truth. The truth was inside that ring. I felt completely in control. No uncertainty, no ambiguity, no look of disappointment from anyone. Just 2 men and an outcome I could force with my own hands. I won more than I lost. My reputation grew, and Desmond Asante, the man, started disappearing behind Desmond Asante, the name. The thing people talked about. The thing people warned each other about. And I told myself that was power. I did not understand yet that I had built a prison, and I was locking myself inside it, one fight at a time. The first marriage ended when I was 31. Paulette, she was a good woman, patient in a way I did not deserve. She tried for 4 years to reach the man underneath all the muscle and the silence. And I made it impossible for her. Not through cruelty, not through anything she could point to in a courtroom and say, "This is what he did." It was subtler than that. It was the way I shut down every emotional conversation before it started. It was the way I made her feel small without ever raising my hand. It was the controlled silence, the slow withdrawal, the message I sent every single day without a single word, that she was not safe enough to see the real me, because I did not know where the real me was anymore. I had buried him so deep under the performance of being Desmond that even I could not find him. We had a son, Marcus. He was 3 when Paulette and I separated. She moved to Birmingham. I saw Marcus on weekends at first, then every other weekend, then once a month. Then the visits started to feel like obligations, and I told myself he was fine. He had his mother. He did not need me hovering. What I meant was, I did not know how to be around a child who looked at me like I was something to be scared of, and it was easier to stay away than sit with what that meant. By the time I met Yvonne, I was 35. She was warm, funny. She had a laugh that could fill a whole house. And for about 6 months, I was a different version of myself with her. Softer, more present. She saw something in me I had stopped believing was there. But the rage always came back. It always came back. It never came out the same way twice. Sometimes it was a door slammed hard enough to shake the frame. Sometimes it was a 3-day silence, so cold she would stand in the kitchen and cry quietly, so I would not hear. Sometimes it was me in the car at 2 in the morning, driving nowhere, because if I stayed in that house one more minute, I was going to become something I could not take back. I knew something was wrong with me. I had known for years. But knowing and doing something about it are 2 very different things when your entire identity is built on being unmovable. I tried church for a season. Yvonne took me. I sat in the pew on Sunday mornings with my hands on my knees and the words of the worship songs on the screen in front of me, and I felt nothing. Or I felt something I immediately pressed back down before it could surface. Because feeling something meant losing control. And losing control was the one thing Desmond Asante did not do. Sunday nights, I would be back in the garage, back under the bar, pushing weight I had no business pushing anymore at my age, with a body that was already sending me signals I refused to read. The steroids were a problem by then, had been for years. I told myself they were just to maintain, to stay competitive. But competitive with what? I was not fighting professionally. I had not worked the doors in 5 years. I was a 42-year-old man in a garage in Wolverhampton injecting something into his body because stopping meant admitting he was getting smaller. And getting smaller meant going back to being the boy that look could destroy. My blood pressure was high. My doctor told me twice. My heart was working too hard. My kidneys were showing strain. I nodded in the consultation room and changed nothing. Yvonne stopped arguing about it. That was the sign I should have read. When a woman stops arguing, it is not because she has accepted it. It is because she has started preparing herself for something. I just did not know what. Marcus was 16 by then. The last time I saw him, we sat in my car outside McDonald's in Birmingham for 40 minutes, and I could not find a single thing to say to him. He looked at me with these quiet eyes, patient eyes, his mother's eyes, and I sat there like a stranger, like a man who shared his blood, but not his world. We ate in silence, and I drove him back and told him I would call him that week. I did not call, and on March the 4th, 2019, a Sunday evening, I walked into my garage at 7:30. I loaded the bar. I put my headphones in, and somewhere between the second and third set, my heart stopped. I did not feel the bar fall. I did not feel my knees go. I did not feel the floor come up to meet me. One moment I was pushing through the third set, and the next moment I was above it. Above all of it. Floating. Still. Looking down at a man on a concrete floor in a garage in Wolverhampton with a barbell across his chest, and his eyes half open and his chest completely still. And I knew it was me. I knew it the way you know something in a dream. Not because you reason it out, but because the knowing is just there, immediate and total. That was my body. Those were my hands. That was the crack running across the second ceiling tile I had been meaning to fix for 2 years and never got around to. There was no pain. That was the first thing that struck me. 20 years of aching joints and compressed vertebrae and a shoulder that had not moved right since a fight in 2009. And none of it. Just silence. Just stillness. Just me hovering above a life I had been slowly destroying and seeing it for the first time from the outside. I remember thinking, Yvonne is in the house. She's in the house right now. She is watching something on television, and she does not know. She does not know yet. And I remember the strangest sensation of wanting to go back inside and tell her not to panic, that I was fine, that I could see myself, and it looked bad, but I was fine. But I was not going back inside. Something was already pulling. Not violently, not with chaos or noise. Just a pull, the way water moves toward drain. Slow at first, then faster, then inevitable. The garage ceiling disappeared. The house disappeared. Wolverhampton disappeared. And I was moving downward through something that had no color and no temperature and no sound. Just depth, just descent. And the further down I went, the heavier everything became. Not physically heavy, something deeper than physical. Like every wrong thing I had ever done had weight, and I was finally feeling all of it at once. I want to be honest with you about what I felt in that descent, because I have heard people describe their NDE, and they talk about peace and warmth and a beautiful light in the distance. That was not my experience. What I felt in that descent was the specific, particular heaviness of a life that had been oriented entirely around self, around protection of self, around the performance of self. And I felt it the way you feel a coat you have been wearing so long you forgot it was on, and someone finally pulls it off your shoulders. Except the coat was made of everything I had refused to feel for 42 years. And it was not peaceful to feel it all at once. It was devastating. The descent slowed and stopped, and I was standing somewhere that I do not have full words for. Not because the memory is unclear. The memory is completely clear. But because the English language was built for the living world, and what I was standing in was something else entirely. The ground beneath my feet was dark, not black like night. More like burnt, like ground that had held fire for so long it had forgotten what it felt like to be anything else. The air was heavy with a heat that did not come from any source I could identify. No flames nearby, no visible fire, just heat that sat in the atmosphere the way humidity sits on a summer day. Except this was not natural. This was intentional. This was the temperature of consequence. And the sound. I need to tell you about the sound. It was not screaming. Not the way I expected. It was more like a low, constant, overlapping noise of voices. Thousands of them. Maybe more. Not crying out for help. Not begging. Just talking. Replaying. Like each voice was locked in a conversation that had no resolution and no end. The same words. The same arguments. The same moments. Over and over and over. I started to understand what I was looking at as my eyes adjusted to the atmosphere. There were figures around me. Not close. At distances. Each one sealed in their own space. Their own loop. And I watched one, a man, I thought, standing with his fists raised, shouting at something I could not see. Then the moment would reset, and he would be standing with his fists raised again, shouting at the same thing. The same fury. The same unresolved explosion. On repeat, for what felt like it had been going on forever and would go on forevermore. And then I saw one that stopped me completely. I saw a man standing in a garage, barbell in his hands, jaw set, eyes hard, and around him, not chains made of metal. Something worse. Strands of something dark and fibrous wrapped around his wrists, his chest, his throat. And every time he lifted the bar, the strands tightened. Every time he set it down, they loosened just enough to let him breathe. Just enough to make him think he was free. Just enough to make him pick it up again. And I knew who I was looking at. I was looking at myself. Not my body on the garage floor in Wolverhampton, but myself. The version of me that had been running the whole operation from the inside. The one who decided that rage was armor. The one who decided that dominance was dignity. The one who chose the bar over the phone call to Marcus every single time. And I cannot tell you what that does to a man to see himself that clearly. To see the machinery of your own destruction laid out in front of you with no filter and no excuse and no performance to hide behind. I just stood there, and for the first time in my adult life, Desmond Asante had absolutely nothing to say. I do not know how long I stood there looking at that image of myself. Time did not work the way it works here. There was no clock, no progression of light, just the weight of the moment and the weight of the seeing. And the seeing was thorough. It was the most thorough thing I have ever experienced. It left nothing in shadow, because it was not just the image of me in the garage with those dark strands wrapped around my wrists. It pulled back further, like a lens widening. And I started to see the timeline. My timeline, laid out not the way I remembered it, but the way it actually was. I saw Wolverhampton, the estate. A small boy sitting on the bottom stair of a terraced house, waiting for his father to come home from work. Not afraid, just waiting, just wanted to show him something. A drawing he had done at school. A teacher had said it was good, really good. And the boy had carried that piece of paper home carefully, holding the edges, not folding it, protecting it the whole bus ride. Because he wanted his father to see it. Because he wanted that look on his father's face to be something different for once. I remembered that boy. I had not thought about him in 30 years. I watched Emmanuel Asante come through the front door, take his coat off, sit in his chair. The boy held out the drawing. Emmanuel looked at it for 2 seconds, nodded once, handed it back, opened his newspaper. That was it. That was the whole moment. And to an adult watching from the outside, it looks like nothing. It looks like a tired man after a long day. It looks like a minor disappointment a child would get over. But I watched what it did to that boy. I watched him fold the drawing, slowly, carefully, the same way he had protected it on the bus. Except this time the care was not about protecting it. It was about hiding it. He folded it smaller and smaller and smaller, and then he put it in his pocket, and he went upstairs and he sat on the edge of his bed. And he made a decision, not in words, not consciously, but in the deep wordless place where character is actually formed. He decided that needing someone to see you is a weakness. He decided that wanting approval was dangerous. He decided that the only safe thing was to become so large, so formidable, so undeniable, that no one would ever have the power to look away again. I watched that boy make that decision, and I watched it follow him for the next 33 years like a shadow he never once looked at directly. I watched it follow him into the boxing gym, into the doors, into the underground fights, into Paulette's kitchen at midnight while she stood with her back to him, trying not to cry, into the car outside that McDonald's in Birmingham where Marcus sat with his mother's patient eyes and waited for a father who did not know how to show up. And then the voice came. It did not announce itself. It did not come from a direction. It was simply present, the way gravity is present, the way your own heartbeat is present. You do not question where it comes from. You just feel it, constant and foundational and older than anything you know. It said, "You have been fighting your whole life." I cannot speak. I do not think speaking worked the same way there. But something in me responded. Something in me said, yes. Yes, I have. Every single day. But you have never fought for the right thing. And that broke something in me that I did not even know was still intact. Because it was true. Every fight I had ever been in, every door I had ever worked, every argument I had ever won, every silence I had ever weaponized, had been for one thing: to protect Desmond, to keep Desmond from being that boy on the stairs again, to make sure no one ever had the power to look away. And in doing that, I had become the very thing I feared most. I had become my father's silence. Except louder. The voice spoke again. Quieter this time. Not less powerful. Just closer. Every time you prayed for strength to stop, you were asking me to help you manage it. But I do not want you to manage it. I want you to surrender it. Give to me the rage, the performance, the lie you have believed about yourself since you were 9 years old sitting on that stair. I felt something move in me then, something I had no category for. It was not emotion the way I had always understood emotion, as something to be contained, redirected, suppressed before it made you vulnerable. This was different. This was something breaking loose that had been load-bearing for so long that when it moved, I felt the whole structure of who I thought I was begin to shift. You built yourself into a fortress, the voice said. But a fortress keeps everything out, including me, including Marcus, including every person I ever sent to reach you. And I saw Marcus, 16 years old, sitting in my passenger seat outside that McDonald's, not afraid of me. I had always told myself he was afraid of me, but that was not what I saw now. I saw a boy who was heartbroken, a boy who had spent 16 years trying to find a door into his father and kept finding walls, a boy who still showed up, who still got in the car, who still sat there for 40 minutes in silence because some part of him refused to stop trying. I had called that silence between us awkward. I had called it distance. I had told myself we just did not have much in common. What it actually was a 16-year-old boy loving his father in the only way his father had left him room to do it. And I had wasted it. I had wasted all of it. I said the only thing left to say, not out loud, not with performance, from the place in me that the fighting and the size and the reputation had never been able to reach. I said, I cannot do this anymore. I cannot fix this. I cannot force my way out of this. I need you to do what I cannot do. And the moment those words formed in me, everything changed, not gradually, not with a slow build. The way a storm does not ease out slowly but stops completely, suddenly, and leaves the air change behind it. The atmosphere shifted. The heat pulled back. The voices in the distance did not get quieter. I simply stopped being part of their frequency, like a channel changing, like something in the spiritual realm recognized that Desmond Asante had finally, for the first time in 42 years, let go. And then the light came. The light did not ease in. It broke through, like something that had been held back, finally given permission to move. It split the atmosphere of that place the way lightning splits a sky, except it did not disappear. It held. It expanded. And it was warm in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. It was warm the way being known is warm. The way being seen, truly seen, not just observed but understood, all the way down to the 9-year-old boy on the stairs with a folded drawing in his pocket, is warm. A hand reached toward me. I could not tell you what it looked like in the way I could describe a hand in this world, but I felt it, and the feeling was not gentle the way I used to think grace was gentle. It was not soft or passive or careful. It was the most powerful thing I have ever felt, and the power of it was not force. It was not dominance. It was not the kind of strength I had spent 42 years chasing. It was the strength of something that had absolutely nothing to prove. And that undid me more than anything else, because I had built my entire life on proving to my father, proving to every man who ever stepped into a ring with me, proving to Paulette, proving to Yvonne, proving to the estate, proving to the reflection in the garage mirror every morning that I was still formidable, still relevant, still worth something. And here was a presence that needed to prove nothing. To no one. Ever. And it was reaching for me anyway. A voice said, "Come out." 2 words. That was all. And my soul moved toward that hand the way a drowning man moves toward a surface he had stopped believing was real. I was pulled, fussed, upward, through the dark atmosphere, through the heat, through the sound of those looping voices that were not my frequency anymore, and then through something that felt like breaking the surface of deep water. A rupture, a gasp, a return. My soul hit my body like a current hitting a wire. I heard the sound before I saw anything. Voices. Urgent. Control panic. Someone counting. Someone saying, "Breathe, come on, breathe." And then air. Air that burned going in because my lungs had forgotten what it felt like. I coughed so hard my whole body convulsed. My eyes opened to a ceiling that was not my garage ceiling. Bright lights. A blue uniform. A face above me. Young paramedic, relief breaking across it like he had just won something. And behind him, Yvonne. Her face was a thing I will carry to my actual grave. Eyes red and swollen, hands pressed against her mouth, shaking, and when my eyes found hers, she made a sound I cannot describe. Not a word, just sound. The sound of someone who had been holding themselves together by pure will for however long I had been gone, and finally did not have to anymore. I tried to speak. Nothing came out but a rasp. But I held her eyes, and something passed between us in that moment that did not need words. Something that said, "I am back, not just breathing. Back." They worked on me for another few minutes before they moved me. I lay there on the garage floor, staring at the crack in the second ceiling tile, the one I had been meaning to fix for 2 years. And I made a decision lying there, unable to move, unable to speak, with tubes and hands and voices all around me. I was going to fix everything I had left broken, not because I was afraid of going back to that place, though I was. I will not pretend otherwise. But because I had seen Marcus's face in that realm, and I understood something I had not understood in 16 years of being his father. He had never stopped trying to reach me, and I had an extraordinary, undeserved, inexplicable second chance to finally open the door. The hospital kept me for 6 days. Cardiac arrest is complicated by years of steroid damage and hypertension. The cardiologist sat across from me on day 2 with a file in his hands and the careful expression of a man preparing to deliver bad news to someone who looks like they might not take it well. He told me I should have brain damage. He told me 17 minutes without adequate oxygen circulation was beyond the threshold. He told me the scans were clean, and he had no clinical explanation for it. I told him I did. He wrote something in his file and moved on. But I meant it. What happened to me in that garage was not survivable by natural means. I know what I was. I know what I had done to that body for 20 years. And I know what I experienced between the moment I left it and the moment I came back. There is no medical column for that. But it is the truest thing that has ever happened to me. On day 3, I asked Yvonne to bring me her phone. I did not have mine. I found Marcus in her contacts. Paulette had given her the number at some point. I did not know when. I did not ask. I just held the phone for a long time, looking at his name. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about transformation. The moment of surrender in the spiritual realm, that part was given to me. The grace of that moment was entirely God. But the phone call to your 16-year-old son who has spent his whole life learning not to expect anything from you, that part you have to do yourself. With shaking hands and a throat that does not work properly yet, and no script and no guarantee of how it goes. I called him. He picked up on the 3rd ring. Quiet, cautious, the way he always answered when he saw it was me. I said, "Marcus, it is Dad. I am in hospital. I am okay, but I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it." Silence on his end. "I have not been your father," I said. "Not really. I have been present in the technical sense, but I have not shown up for you the way you deserved. And I am sorry. I am deeply, genuinely sorry. Not because I nearly died, because it is true, and you deserve to hear it. More silence. And then I heard it. The sound of a 16-year-old boy crying in a way he had probably been holding in for years. Not dramatic, just quiet and real and a long time coming. He said, "I just want my dad." That was it. 5 words. And they went through me like light through a window. Because what he was saying was not, "I forgive you," or "it is okay," or "I understand." He was saying something better than all of that. He was saying, "I'm still here. After everything, I am still here." That was the moment I understood what I had been given back. I came home from hospital a different man, not a performing different man, not a man who had made promises before and was making them again with more sincerity this time. I mean, structurally different. The rage that had lived in my chest like a resident, like something that paid rent and left its shoes at the door, was gone. Not suppressed, not managed. Gone. The space where it used to live was just quiet. And in that quiet, I could hear things I'd been drowning out for decades. Yvonne's voice when she was happy. The specific way she laughed at something on television. I had not actually heard that laugh in years. I stopped the steroids the day I came home. No withdrawal. No white-knuckling. No white-knuckling. The desire simply was not there. The doctor monitored me for weeks, expecting a difficult process. There was no difficult process, because the thing the steroids had been feeding, the need to remain large and formidable and unmovable, had been dealt with at the root. Not the symptom, the root. Marcus came to Wolverhampton for the first time in 4 years the following month. He sat in my living room with a cup of tea, and we talked for 3 hours. Not about anything significant. Football, school, a film he had watched, normal things, beautiful, ordinary, previously impossible things. And at the end of it, he stood up to leave, and he hugged me. A real hug. The kind a son gives a father when he is not afraid of him. I stood in my front doorway watching him walk to Paulette's car, and I thought, this is what I almost threw away forever. This specific moment. This boy. This ordinary Tuesday evening in Wolverhampton. About 4 months after I came home, a man from my church asked me to speak at a men's breakfast. 15 men in a church hall on a Saturday morning with bad coffee and plastic chairs. I stood up and told them everything. The fighting, the steroids, the garage floor, Marcus, all of it. No performance, no polished version, just the truth in the order it happened. 3 men came to me afterward in tears. One of them grabbed my arm and said, "That is my life. That is exactly my life. How do I get out?" And I realized in that moment that my story was not mine to keep. It never had been. That was how Still Standing began. Not with a plan, not with a vision board or a ministry strategy. With 15 men and bad coffee and one honest conversation that cracked something open in a church hall in Wolverhampton. We meet every Friday evening now. Men of all ages. Men who grew up learning that emotion was weakness. Men who are losing their marriages and do not know why. Men who look at their children and see fear where there should be trust and do not know how to change it. Men who have been fighting their whole lives and are exhausted from it and do not know how to stop. I tell them what the voice told me in that place I'm never going back to. You're not too broken. You're not too far. You're not too late. I tell them that the thing they're calling strength, the silence, the control, the walls, the performance, is not strength. It is a cage. And God has the key, but you have to want out badly enough to stop pretending the cage is a palace. I tell them about Marcus, about the phone call, about the hug at the front door, about the Tuesday evening that cost me nothing and nearly cost me everything. And every week, without fail, at least one man in that room hears something that sounds like his own life described back to him. and he realizes he is not alone in it. And that realization, that is where transformation begins. Not in a dramatic moment on a garage floor. For most people, it begins far more quietly, with the simple, radical act of finally telling the truth about where you are. If you're watching this right now and you recognize yourself in my story, if you recognize the cage, the performance, the exhaustion of maintaining a version of yourself that is slowly destroying everything around you, I need you to hear this. God is not waiting for you to fix yourself before he moves. He is not withholding transformation until you have managed to be better on your own long enough to deserve it. That is not how this works. I know, because I tried that version for 20 years and it led me to a garage floor. Surrender is not weakness. It is the most courageous thing you will ever do. And the people in your life who are still there, still showing up, still sitting in the passenger seat, still picking up on the third ring, they're not there by accident. They are there because God is merciful, and mercy has a shelf life if we keep refusing it. Do not waste what you have been given. I did not die on that garage floor in Wolverhampton on March the 4th, 2019. I was made new there. And every single day, I wake up in a quiet house with Yvonne's laugh coming from the kitchen and a text from Marcus that says nothing more important than a football score. I know exactly what that cost, and I know exactly who paid for it. Before you go, if this testimony reached something in you today, please subscribe to this channel and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I am praying over every single person who hears this story, because God brought you to this video for a reason, and that reason is not finished yet.